What's up everybody, David Rodriguez here, and in today's video we're going to be talking about cold exposure and cold showers. And yes, I am riding off the coattails of Benjamin Tallis's craft therapy video that he recently put out, and also because I have recently started my own cold shower regimen. And so I wanted to look at the research and see what the research said about cold exposure and cold exposure like therapy, and see is it really the performance enhancing and the recovery boosting thing that it is so purported to be. Now, for the first study, we have one from Japan, Wakabayashi, in 2015, where he analyzed in cohorts where they analyzed how it affects dynamic exercise, swimming, isometric contractions. And I'm going to focus more on the dynamic exercise because that's what tricking is, right? We're moving constantly through the air, and dynamic exercise appeared to take a hit from being from cold exposure, right? So they did their test, and then when they went in and did the exercise, they were both negatively affected by it. And the electromyography that they would do, that it would show that the frequency, so like the amount of times that the muscle fiber would twitch, would decrease, but the intensity, so the amplitude at which it depended. So it would either, sometimes the waves would be smaller, or sometimes the waves would be bigger. And they also wanted to see if like cold induced vasodilation would play a role in any of this, and there was no significant effect for it. Now, so that kind of sucks. And the second study that I have as far as talking about performance is, I have one by Bleakley and Davison in 2009. And their conclusion was that the physiological and biochemical reactions are still largely unsure. There doesn't really seem to be any evidence that supports cold exposure therapy or cold showers, even from a recovery standpoint or a performance standpoint. So regardless if you're taking your cold shower before or after a workout, there apparently doesn't really seem to be any statistical difference in performance. So that sucks. So then why would we even bother with taking cold showers? Well, in those studies, so going back to the Wakabayashi study, they found that brown adipose tissue, so if you don't know, you have two different kinds of fatty tissues within your body. You have white adipose tissue and brown adipose tissue. And I just recently found this out too. White adipose tissue is what it sounds like. It's like the regular fatty tissue that is found within your body that plays a role within leptin and ghrelin and all that stuff within your digestive system, and doesn't really contribute, and it works as insulation, but it doesn't necessarily contribute to actively warming you up. Brown adipose tissue, on the other hand, leads to what's called non-shivering thermogenesis, or NST. So it's just a different kind of fatty cell that actively helps towards keeping you warm during cold exposure. And so in the Wakabayashi study, he found that brown adipose tissue does contribute to non-shivering thermogenesis. So it will keep you warmer when you're exposed to the cold exposure therapy, or to the cold, right? But both skeletal muscle tissue and regular white adipose tissue did not seem to produce any kind of effect outside of a shivering. And so again, we have another study from Willett in 2012 where it talks about cold exposure does lead to an increase in brown adipose tissue activity, and that it increased the basal metabolic rate. So that's the big thing, is that it increases your basal metabolic rate, right? Because it stimulates, since it's non-shearing thermogenesis, your body has to use some more extra fuel to help increase the heat, and then that increase in heat leads into an increase in basal metabolic rate, and then that is like allows you to burn more calories overall. And that's kind of the big thing, is that it's supposed to be for a weight loss, kind of just another thing to help boost your metabolism and help boost like losing weight. And so it was shown that it increased in a 1.8 fold in whole body expenditure. And they did this with and they all seem to do this, all the studies, that they use a tube suit of some sort. And the water's not freezing. It's about 64 degrees. So you're not going to be freezing, but it's not necessarily going to be comfortable. They would run it through their bodies. And another thing that was kind of interesting is that almost all the studies took place over an hour or 2 hours of exposure. So I couldn't find any single study that talked about how, or even in 3 or 5 minutes or even 10-minute bouts, right, as you normally would for a shower or anything like cold immersion. Everything for whatever was mild, so only about 64 degrees, and took place over hours. And so again, in another study by did I write this right? Shachuk. Ramu, in 2016, they had 2 different groups, right? So this was conducted in Sweden. They had 2 different groups. One group was instructed to stay out of the cold, and one group was to go through the cold exposure therapy and the process that they had set up for them. And it was shown, and much in a similar way, where the participants were given a suit to wear that was running cold tap water through the suit to reduce their body temperature. And again, right after an hour of cold exposure, there was an increase in metabolic rate in the cold exposed. And once they transitioned from being cold, they had to warm back up to room temperature. They saw an increase in metabolic rate. And in those who did not do that, who were told to avoid the cold, they saw a decrease in metabolic rate, and they saw an increase in leptin. So meaning that they were more full, right? And it is shown that you would have an inverse relationship with leptin, that you would have lower leptin levels if you were exposed to the cold, meaning that you wouldn't be as full. You'd probably be a bit more hungry. You'd want to eat a little bit more, right, as you're burning that energy off. So real quickly, also for those who don't know, leptin is your full hormone, right? It's what signals, it tells you, hey, I am full, I do not need to eat anymore. And then you have ghrelin, which is, hey, I am hungry. You can think of it like the gremlins from Gremlins, right? Don't feed them after 12. Same thing. You gremlins, ghrelin, hungry. So unfortunately, it doesn't seem that there is anything supporting cold showers or cold exposure as a means of recovery and or increasing performance. But there does, so if you're looking maybe to kind of boost yourself up a little bit with losing weight, you can probably do a little bit stimulation, right? But these are done over weeks, right? You can't just do it for a day and then expect something to happen. You have to do this over a couple weeks to months. And you will maybe see an increase in your metabolic rate, maybe. And so anecdotally, right, doing cold showers, if you are looking to develop some resiliency, right, try to push yourself a little bit more out of your comfort zone, or just try to maybe have something else stimulating in your life, then cold showers is probably going to be something that you might look for, that is cost effective and that doesn't really require you to have to really step out of your boundaries, especially if you have like social anxiety or anything like that. So this is David Rodriguez with cold exposure, cold therapy, cold stuff. Hope y'all like the video. If you like more stuff like this, I can go deeper into different kinds of studies, or there's things that if you want to learn about, please let me know. And I'll see you on the next video. Peace.